Hi, very good morning, all of you. So, welcome to day 4 of our 21-day challenge. Hope you guys are all ready. So, in this live session, we'll again resort to the same format, have some general discussion, and then one image based academic oriented discussion. I hope you guys are all ready. And it's fantastic to know that you're all doing option D, which is super awesome. So, just keep this enthusiasm going, right? I hope you all had enough sleep, and which is very important. Waking up early is obviously very important, but sleeping early gives you adequate quality sleep, which is really responsible for your entire day, like how it's going to be oriented. So either positive or negative. If you have enough quality sleep, you're going to feel super fresh, super energetic, and super awesome without any doubt. So without much delay, let's jump into our presentation. I hope you guys are all ready. So I'm sure you're all on fire. So welcome to day 4 of our 21-day challenge. So first we'll start with some general topic discussion. So the reference for the same is Psychocybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. So let's review some information. So when we feel jittery or worried, so this is about doing a single thing at a single time. Often we are so involved in so many activities consciously that we lose or we find it very difficult to pay attention towards the task at hand. So that's the context here. Let's review. When we feel jittery or worried or anxious in thinking of great amount of work that lies before us, the jittery feelings are not caused by the work, but by our mental attitude, which is, I ought to be able to do this all at once. This is very significant. If you observe, often we think that other situations or others or external situations are responsible for all the negativity that we are feeling. But if you dissect and carefully dig in, you'll realize that these are caused by our own mental attitude. That is something happening over here. So we become nervous because we are trying to do the impossible and thereby making futility and frustration inevitable. The truth is, we can only do one thing at a time. Realizing this, fully convincing ourselves of this simple and obvious truth, enables us to mentally stop trying to do the things that lie next and to concentrate all our awareness, all our responsiveness on this one thing we're doing now. So, when we work with this attitude, we are relaxed, we are free from feelings of hurry and anxiety, and we are able to concentrate and think at our best. Again, it cannot be more true. So, if you carefully observe, often I'm sure that we all have plenty of work, a lot of activities to accomplish, but consciously we can only focus on one thing at a time, and if we focus on one thing at a time consciously, that would empower us. We're not talking about our subconscious mind, which has a tremendous potential of doing infinite number of things simultaneously. We're talking about conscious activities. The best example is right now you're attending this live session. So are you entirely focusing all your energies on this, or are you trying to brush your teeth, drink something else? So is it divided? So that's why we say undivided attention towards the task at hand. If you're doing so, then you can make maximum use of it. So just keep this in mind. And when you're preparing, when you're doing any activity, mindfulness, paying undivided attention is the basic ingredient, right? You can consider it as a basic ingredient. So, in the process of your preparation, you have MCQs to practice, videos to watch, assignments to do. If you think all of this at once, it will definitely cause anxiety and frustration. But if you do one by one at a time, then obviously you can save yourself from all these negative feelings. And as an added bonus, you can continue doing these things one by one with renewed enthusiasm and with full attention possible. So with those initial comments, let's move into our academic discussion. I'll project you an image. Observe that very carefully. I hope it's clear. Yeah, hi, a very good morning, all of you. Yeah, just observe this image. I'll give you a few seconds time. Identify the tooth which is being projected here. So it's obviously an occlusal aspect of a posterior tooth. You have various surfaces, buccal, mesial, distal, lingual, and also you have this mesial marginal ridge, distal marginal ridge, mesial pit, distal pit, central developmental groove, central pit. So various parts have been labeled. So what could this illustration represent? So that will be the topic of our focus now. So this is the occlusal aspect of mandibular first molar. So we'll focus on certain key points or key areas, and then we'll see what we can learn from this particular discussion. So first of all, I'm sure all of you are familiar with the occlusal morphology because in first year as well as in third year, you might have done several carvings, not just for sake of signatures, but for sake of understanding what's there actually, right? Please don't mind, just give me 1 second. I hear Toffee snoring heavily. I should warn her because she is causing a lot of disturbance. Toffee. Okay. So the mandibular first molar is somewhat hexagonal from the occlusal aspect. As you can see, not exactly hexagonal, but somewhat hexagonal. So the crown measurement is greater by 1 mm or more mesiodistally than buccolingually. And this is opposite in case of maxillary first molar. So understanding this is very, very important. The crown measurement is greater by 1 mm mesiodistally, right, than buccolingually. So it's more wider mesiodistally than buccolingually. And the opposite is true in case of maxillary first molar. Just arbitrarily observe this illustration and see the length mesiodistally and buccolingually. Obviously, it seems wider mesiodistally. The buccolingual measurement of crown is greater on the mesial side than on the distal side. Again, it's very evident and obvious here. As you can see, I'm trying to point out. So the buccolingual measurement of the crown is greater on the mesial than on the distal. So if at all there is a question asking you, find out the statement which is false or all of the following statements are true except, you should be able to answer. Also, the measurement of the crown at contact areas, which includes the two buccal and distal cusps, is greater than the mesiodistal measurement of two lingual cusps. In other words, the crown converges lingually from contact areas. So as you can see, right? So slightly there is convergence from the contact areas towards the lingual aspect. And the mesobuccal cusp. So coming to various cusps, you can see we have a mesobuccal cusp. This is distobuccal cusp, and this is a distal cusp. Yeah, I think you can see the pointer. And also you have a mesolingual and distolingual, a total of 5 cusps, of which 4 are major cusps, except the distal cusp, which is smaller. So what is the size of the cusps? If there is a question like arrange the cusps in a descending order based on their size or ascending order based on their size, so what would be the answer? So the mesobuccal cusp is slightly larger than either of the two lingual cusps. So this is mesobuccal cusp, which is slightly larger than either mesolingual or distolingual. And then we have this distobuccal cusp, which is smaller than any of the other 3 mentioned. So the largest is mesobuccal, followed by 2 lingual cusps, and then followed by distobuccal cusp, and the smallest cusp is distal. You can make a note of this. And at least now, try observing this illustration carefully. I'm sure you'll never forget this relation. In fact, the size of cusps, ascending or descending order, is also very important in case of maxillary first molar. Okay, so this is in case of mandibular first molar. So the smallest cusp is distal cusp, not distobuccal, distal cusp. and the largest cusp relatively is a mesobuccal cusp. This is true in large number of population, not necessarily true in all cases, right? Now, if you look into some other additional points, from a developmental viewpoint, all mandibular molars have 4 major cusps, as we discussed prior, whereas maxillary molars have only 3 major cusps. Do make a note of it, consider this very, very important. So except distal, all other 4 are considered major cusps. The occlusal surfaces of mandibular first molar may be described as follows. So as you can see, we have a major fossa, that is the central fossa, and then we have 2 minor fossa, that is mesial triangular fossa and distal triangular fossa. The major fossa is central fossa. It's roughly circular and is centrally placed on occlusal surface between the buccal and lingual cusp ridges. The 2 minor fossa are mesial and distal triangular fossas. So mesial triangular fossa is immediately distal to the mesial marginal ridge, as evident here, whereas distal triangular fossa is immediately mesial to the distal marginal ridge. If you simply observe the words, it might be confusing. But if you simultaneously observe the illustration, it will be very, very easy. And in fact, you need not remember the words because it's quite obvious and evident in the illustration. So that's the advantage we have with illustrations. We need not use much conscious effort, and there will be no confusion. Wherever you find an image, it's better to learn through images, right? So this is mesial marginal ridge, and right, so mesial triangular fossa is present distal to mesial marginal ridge, as mentioned in literature, and opposite is true in case of a distal triangular fossa. So if you look into the developmental groove, so this is the central developmental groove. The developmental grooves on occlusal surfaces are central developmental groove, mesiobuccal, distobuccal, lingual developmental grooves, right? So we have these developmental grooves, along with which there are numerous supplemental grooves, right? Tributaries to these developmental grooves. So you can see a central developmental groove, mesiobuccal, this is distobuccal, and then we have this lingual developmental grooves. Now, moving on to a few more additional points. The central fossa of occlusal surface is concave area. The boundaries are very important. Again, as I said, if you just observe the words, it might be confusing, but simultaneously observe the illustration, it will be very, very, very easy. So as you can see, the central fossa of occlusal surface is concave area bounded by the following. The distal slope of mesobuccal cusp, as I've been pointing out, both mesial and distal slopes of distobuccal cusp, and then mesial slope of distal cusp. And coming to a lingual aspect, yeah, again the same holds true. The distal slope of mesolingual cusp and the mesial slope of distal lingual cusp. So this entire shaded area, right? So you can consider that as a central fossa along with boundaries, right? So consider this very, very important. So there can be options which can be created to confuse you. Like you can see here, mesial slope of distal lingual cusp. They can mention it as a distal slope of distal lingual cusp. So you should not be confused. Okay. So this is central fossa and the boundaries. As you can see, again, let's review this simultaneously once again. I want you guys to observe the illustration, not the text this second time, okay? So the central fossa of occlusal surface is concave area bounded by the distal slope of mesobuccal cusp, mesial and distal slopes of distobuccal cusp, mesial slope of distal cusp, and then a distal slope of mesolingual cusp and mesial slope of distolingual cusp, right? Yeah, by the way, it's not a brain teaser, it's a very simple anatomy. Just know the names of various structures here. It will be very, very, very easy. So all of these development grooves converge in the center of central fossa in central pit or center pit. So now coming to other minor fossas. Now we have seen a major fossa. Now coming to minor fossas. So mesial triangular fossa of occlusal surface is a smaller concave area than central fossa, and boundaries, I'm sure you can answer it very conveniently now. bounded by the mesial slope of mesobuccal cusp. So as you can see, this is the mesial slope of mesobuccal cusp, the mesial mesial marginal ridge MMR, and the mesial slope of mesolingual cusp, right? So triangular fossas are bound by the mesial slopes of mesobuccal, mesolingual, and it's also bound by mesial marginal ridge. The same holds true with opposite terms in case of distal triangular fossa. So distal triangular fossa is in most instances less distinct than mesial fossa. So this is something which you can make a note of. So coming to prominences, major fossa, obviously central fossa is very prominent, followed by mesial triangular fossa, but distal fossa can be even less prominent or conspicuous. So distal triangular fossa is in most instances less distinct than mesial fossa. The distal slope of distal cusp, distal marginal ridge, and distal slope of distolingual cusp are bounded. The central groove has its other terminal in this fossa. An extension of central groove quite often crosses the distal marginal ridge, however, lingual to distal contact area. So these are finer details, right? So I wanted to just go through it. In fact, this is not very much evident in the illustration, but observe the text once again. An extension of central groove quite often crosses the distal marginal ridge, however, lingual to distal contact area, right? Now, let's move on to the final aspect. The central developmental groove seems to be centrally located in relation to buccolingual crown dimension, as evident here. And most importantly, the triangular ridges of lingual cusps. As you can see, starting from here till here, the triangular ridges of lingual cusps are longer than triangular ridges of buccal cusps. Consider this point very, very important, right? So all these highlighted texts, you can just make a note of, or if you have a textbook with you, you can just underline these points or paste sticky notes as per your convenience. Good, right? I've seen some of you answering the question. So you said it's mandibular first molar, all good. So is it mandibular first molar right or left? Can you answer that? Because we should be even more specific. I mean, not specific to such an extent that you should name the patient from whose this tooth has been extracted, but at least specific to such an extent that you should be able to identify whether it is a left one or a right one. Okay, so before we wind up, I'll just summarize all the things we've discussed so far very quickly, and then we'll conclude the session, right? So initially we've seen about doing things consciously, mindfully, paying undivided attention. And if we carefully observe, to a greater extent or to a maximum extent, we feel worried or anxious because of visualizing the end result as failure. And on day-to-day basis, it's about our intention to do so many activities simultaneously, ultimately leading us to nowhere. Ultimately, we feel unfinished. We feel that the tasks are unfinished, and that builds up a lot of frustration and anxiety. Rather, we can focus on, we're talking about conscious mind, not subconscious mind, which can do infinite things, but consciously we can focus on one thing at a time. So right now you're attending this live session. If you're doing it mindfully, obviously, you can enjoy this session, make a maximum use of it, isn't it? It's as simple as that. Now, subject wise, we have seen this illustration. So this is not left, but well tried, don't worry. This is right, mandibular right first molar. Okay, even if you're wrong, that's absolutely fine, because you're not going to repeat this mistake again. So coming to occlusal aspect, so we have seen so many important points. So we have these four major fossa and four major cusps, one major fossa, four major cusps, right? And one major fossa. And we have the smallest cusp being distal, the largest being mesobuccal cusp. And the central fossa is concave, and we've seen the boundaries. We've also seen the boundaries of mesial and distal triangular fossa. And before concluding, we've learned that the triangular ridges on lingual cusps are longer than the triangular ridges of their opposite counterparts, that is buccal cusps. And also, you've seen the dimensions. The crown is roughly hexagonal, and the crown measurement is greater by 1 mm or more mesiodistally than buccolingually, whereas the opposite is true in case of maxillary first molar. The buccolingual measurement of crown is greater on the mesial than on the distal side, as you can see, and also the crown seems to be slightly tapering lingually. And also the mesiobuccal cusp, the order or the ascending or descending order of the size of the cusps, right? We have seen that, and we have discussed it at length. And also we have seen that there are 4 major cusps, and obviously distal is not a major cusp given its function, given its size. In case of maxillary molars, we have these 3 major cusps. And the rest of the things I think we discussed. And coming to grooves, main grooves, central developmental groove, and also you can see mesiobuccal, distobuccal, and lingual developmental groove. And also we have seen the boundaries of this central fossa, mesial triangular and distal triangular fossa. And finally, the location of central developmental groove seems to be centrally located in the buccolingual crown dimension, and also, as we have discussed, the triangular ridges of lingual cusps are longer than triangular ridges of buccal cusps. Okay, so these are some of the things which I wanted to highlight in this specific video. So as I mentioned, along with attending this live session, if you can have an exclusive customized notes on various topics which we are discussing, it will be like a handout, right? Handout for your own sake, for your own self. So if you have any queries or you need any further clarification, feel free to get back through mail. So I hope this 21-day challenge is going fine with you. In fact, I'm growing more and more energetic as each day is passing. And when I say this, trust me. So today I'm at my peak, like I'm feeling even more energetic, even more awesome. So it's all about inculcating, as I mentioned in last night's post, inculcating habits which are the game changers. And it's a gradual process. It doesn't happen overnight. That's the reason why we started with this 21-day challenge. We have more challenges coming up if you guys are ready. Okay, and I sincerely hope that these challenges will bring out so many positives in you, and you'll make maximum use of the available time, not just for your personal progress, but also for professional progress. So have a fantastic day ahead. And before I conclude, always remember it's about our efforts towards the task at hand. That is hard work, consistency, and most importantly, believe in yourself. So wish you all a great day ahead. Love you all.